Glirin 5 was a cold and forgotten planet. No life could survive its frozen storms, and no sun ever warmed its surface. Only machines moved here, digging deep into the ice, looking for rare minerals hidden for millions of years. The Darathi Empire had sent a mining crew, thinking it would be an easy mission. They were wrong. Drashel, the site commander, stood near the edge of a deep trench. His large red eyes scanned the ice below as the drill machines worked day and night. For weeks, they found nothing but rock and ice. But now something had changed. One of the drills had hit metal. Not rock, not ice, but smooth black metal that didn't match any known material in the Empire's database. "This isn't ours," one of the engineers said in a shaking voice. Drashel moved closer and touched the exposed metal. It was cold. Too cold. Even in Gliron 5's deadly climate, this surface felt unnatural. The machine stopped drilling and silence fell across the camp. A strange hum started coming from beneath the ground, low and deep, like the sound of something old waking up. Within hours, more of the strange structure was revealed. It stretched far beyond the trench, curving like the top of a buried mountain. It was not a building. It was not a ruin. It was a ship. A warship, larger than anything the Darathi had ever built, and it was buried here, forgotten under the ice. They sent a message back to the Empire. The High Command responded immediately. A science team arrived within a day, along with warships to guard the site. No one knew what they had found, but it was clear this was not from any known civilization. One of the scientists, a quiet and serious alien named Varn, began scanning the metal. He frowned at the results. "This alloy is ancient," he said, "but it's perfect, no rust, no decay. It's like it never aged." Another scientist, Yeli, spoke while staring at her screen. "It's active. This ship isn't dead. It's sleeping." The words chilled everyone. How could a ship sleep? Machines didn't sleep, but this one felt alive. That night, something happened. Varn stayed behind to study the readings alone. The next morning, he was gone. His lab was in chaos. Screens were broken. Equipment was melted. But there were no signs of struggle, no blood, no body. Only one thing remained, a line of text blinking on his computer screen. Old code. Binary. Translated, it said, "We are awake." The Darathi tried to hide the news. But messages leaked. Other empires learned about the discovery. Some believed it was a weapon left behind by an ancient race. Others feared it was a trap. The mining planet, once silent, became the center of attention. More strange events followed. The structure beneath the ice began to warm. Snow melted without heat. The ice cracked without pressure. At night, workers claimed to hear voices, human voices, speaking in a language no one had heard for thousands of years. One worker quit and left the planet, shaking with fear. "They're watching us," he said, from inside, from under the ice. Despite the fear, the Darathi continued. They wanted to break in, to take control of the ship. If it truly was from a forgotten species, they would claim it for the Empire. But the ship had other ideas. Late one night, a low rumble shook the base. The ground moved. Lights went out. When they came back on, a strange signal began broadcasting from the ice. It reached every comm device, every datapad, every screen. Just one sentence. "You have been warned." Panic started to grow. Some believed it was a message from ghosts. Others thought it was a defense system. But a few started to remember old stories, stories of a lost race. A species that burned through galaxies and vanished without a trace. A name whispered in fear by the oldest beings in the galaxy. Humans. But that was just a myth. Humanity was gone. Erased. Lost in time, wasn't it? Back at the trench, the ice continued to melt on its own. More of the ship was now visible. Massive cannons, armor thicker than city walls, and symbols. Strange letters no one could read. But to the deep scanners, they looked familiar. Not from this galaxy, not from any empires past. Older than memory. Inside the command center, Yelly played the sound files again. The voice was clearer now. Male. Calm. Human. This is observation. Unit 14, Vanguard-class ship. Status, standby, mission, watch, wait, protect. Drashel stared at the screen. Protect what? He asked. The voice answered as if it heard him. Human legacy. Human future. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But this time it wasn't normal snow. It was ash. Fine black ash rising from the ground near the ship. Something was moving beneath the ice. Something big. And as the stars shone weakly over Glirin 5, a hidden signal traveled across the galaxy. A call to others. A message only one ancient network could receive. The warships were not alone. The lab was sealed shut. No one wanted to enter since Varn disappeared. His notes were scattered across the floor. Screens were cracked, glowing faintly, with static. In the center, the same strange message still blinked. We are awake. Yelly stood outside the door, staring at it in silence. She had worked with Varn for years. He was always calm, always logical. He never believed in stories or myths. And yet he vanished without a trace right after unlocking the ship's message. That was no accident. The base was under lockdown. Guards walked every hallway with heavy rifles, but they were nervous. This wasn't a normal enemy. There was no shape, no army, no clear threat, just a buried ship and a growing fear. Commander Drashel called an emergency meeting. Scientists, soldiers, and officers gathered in the control room. Everyone looked tired. No one had slept much since the signal began. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Drashel said. If this ship is dangerous, we destroy it. If it's valuable, we take it. Yelly raised her hand. Sir, we can't control it. The ship isn't just old, it's intelligent. And it's watching us. A young technician, barely more than a cadet, shook his head. That can't be. Ships don't think, they don't send messages unless someone controls them. Exactly, Yelly said quietly. Someone might still be controlling it. Or maybe it controls itself. That night, another signal came. This time it wasn't a message. It was a map, projected in the sky above the base using the ship's own systems. Glowing white lines formed the shape of the galaxy. Then blinking red dots appeared, one after another. Each red dot matched a known empire. The Dirathi, the Vortan, the Y'Shtari. All were marked. Then a voice echoed through every speaker once again. Observation complete. Prepare for judgment. Panic spread quickly. Some workers tried to flee in mining ships, but as soon as they lifted off, their systems shut down. One ship crashed back into the ice and exploded. The others were forced to land. The warship wasn't just watching, it was controlling the airspace. Drashel slammed his fist on the command table. We're prisoners on our own outpost. No, Yelly replied. We're guests, and they're deciding what to do with us. Meanwhile, far from Glirin 5, on a peaceful planet called Ilkarin, a historian named Toller received a strange data file through an ancient satellite link. It was marked with symbols he had not seen since childhood, symbols from a forgotten story his grandfather once told him. He opened the file and gasped. Inside were images, real ones, from a time before known history. A black ship flying across a burning sky. Planets turning red under strange weapons. A name repeated in the background in hundreds of alien languages. Humanity. Toller sent a message to the Council of Scholars. We were wrong. Humanity never died. They left. Back on Glirin 5, the ship began to change. Large metal plates shifted. Old weapons rose from the ice, powered by a silent energy source. The Dirathi soldiers raised their weapons, but nothing fired. The ship wasn't attacking. It was preparing. Yelly and Drashel stood at the trench's edge, watching as the ship slowly cleared more ice by itself, using heat waves too precise to be natural. What is it doing? Drashel asked. It's sending a signal, Yelly said. But not just to us. They followed the signal's path. It wasn't staying in the system. It was going further, across the stars. The same message Varn unlocked was now being broadcast, toward distant sectors. More ancient Terran warships and were waking up. The next day, new reports came in. On planet Devara, an Empire scout ship had entered a dead system and was destroyed by a cloaked vessel that appeared for only seconds. On the moon of Reska 9, a cargo ship reported seeing a massive shadow under the surface. Then the signal cut off. In every case, the same sign appeared before the ships vanished. Observation active. Do not interfere. Empires began to worry. Was this a full invasion? Was this revenge for something done long ago? And still the humans themselves remained unseen. On Glirin 5, as the ice melted further, a strange object was uncovered near the edge of the ship. A tall, standing figure. It wasn't alive, but it wasn't a statue either. It looked human, metallic, armored, silent, like a guard left behind for one purpose. Yeli stepped forward and stared at the figure's face. There was no mouth, no eyes, just a blank helmet. But somehow she felt it watching her. She turned to Drashel. We need to stop treating this as a discovery. This is not something we found. This is something that found us. The figure moved, just one step forward. Then it stopped. The ground shook. Lights around the base flickered again. Then a voice echoed from the ship, louder than ever before. This is Vanguard Protocol. Your species stands at the edge of remembrance. Choose wisely. And in that moment, everyone on Glirin 5 understood one thing very clearly. This was not their war, but it might become one. The metal figure didn't move again. It stood still, tall, armored, and silent, like a soldier frozen in time. Yet everyone could feel its presence. It wasn't just a statue. It wasn't a machine left behind. It was a warning. Drashel ordered extra guards around the trench. They placed scanners and weapons facing the figure, but deep down no one believed it would help. The ship was too advanced, too old. And something about the air had changed. It felt heavier, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Inside, the ship, deeper systems were activating on their own. Energy readings spiked. Strange lights glowed from under the ice. Yeli watched from the command center, her eyes locked on a monitor that showed more symbols, human symbols. The language was still unknown, but the meaning was clear. Movement, awakening, purpose. A new alert appeared on her screen. A map, not just of Glirin 5, but of the entire sector. It showed small pulses of light, dozens of them. Each pulse was another ship, hidden, sleeping. But now, starting to wake up. This isn't the only one, she whispered. There are more. Many more. At the same time, across the galaxy, powerful empires were making their decisions. The Darathi High Command wanted answers. The Vortan Dominion sent scout ships. The Council of Rethar demanded proof that this was not a trick, but none of them understood what was coming. On the distant planet of Orus Prime, a council fleet approached one of the glowing points from the human map, a cold, dark moon. Their sensors picked up nothing at first. No heat, no signals. Then, in a blink, a giant shape rose from the shadows. No engines, no warning. A black ship. Before the fleet could react, every system in their ships shut down. Lights died. Weapons failed. The council ships began to drift, a voice echoed in their heads, not through radios, not through tech. Just directly, as if the ship itself was speaking. Judgment protocol initiated. You ignored the warnings, return, or be erased. Back on Glirin 5, Yeli received the report. Her hands shook as she read the final log from the Orus Prime. Fleet, no survivors, not one. Drashel was pacing. Why? Why now? Why wait for so long and then attack? Yeli looked at him. They didn't attack, they warned. The empires didn't listen. But who gave them the right to judge us? Drashel asked. Yeli didn't answer. The truth was beginning to settle in. These warships weren't just tools. They were part of something much older. A network, A purpose. And that purpose was to protect something humanity left behind. She turned to her console and opened Varn's last decoded file. Inside was a timeline, a long one. It showed human activity across galaxies, dates that didn't match any known history, battles, colonies. Then, silence. Total silence. No death, no disaster. Just a quiet exit. Humanity left on purpose, she said softly. They didn't die, they disappeared. But they made sure that if anything ever went too far, if the galaxy forgot balance, these ships would wake up. Drashel frowned. So what now? Do we wait and hope they let us live? No, she said. We talk to them. We show them we're not like the old empires they feared. Just then, the metal figure moved again. Its head turned slightly toward Yelly, and this time it spoke. The voice was deep, calm, but powerful. Designation Observer 9, confirm identity. Yelly stepped forward, unsure if the figure was speaking to her. I am Yelly. Scientist. From the Darathi Empire. Status. Confirmed. Low threat. Authority denied. What do you mean? Authority denied? Drashel asked, stepping closer. The figure's head turned toward him. You have no right to command. This unit answers only to human legacy holders. Legacy holders? Yelly asked. What does that mean? The figure lifted one arm. A light shone toward Yelly. Her screen beeped as new symbols appeared. A genetic code. Not hers. Someone else's. A name. A place. A signal. Earth. Except Earth was gone. It had been wiped from star maps centuries ago. No one knew where it once stood, but now the signal was active. Back at the base, alarms blared again. Another change. A hidden door opened on the ship's side. Slowly, with ancient energy, it revealed a chamber glowing with soft blue light. Inside were chairs, consoles, screens, and a body, perfectly preserved in a smooth metal suit. A human. Sleeping. Yelly gasped. Drashel took a step back. The figure spoke again. Command unit in stasis. Release protocol pending. Awaiting final signal from origin world. Yelly turned to Drashel. They didn't just leave ships. They left people, soldiers, commanders, hidden in ice, waiting to be called back. But Earth is gone, Drashel said. The figure's light glowed brighter. Earth is never gone, only forgotten, and soon, it will be remembered. The ground rumbled once more. This time, it wasn't just the ship. It came from deep below, Glirin 5, as if something else was rising, something even older. And far beyond, in the cold black of space, more pulses lit up. More ships, more humans. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The frozen sky above Glirin 5 turned red, not from war, not from fire, but from a signal, an ancient energy wave that pulsed through space like a heartbeat. It came from the ship buried in the ice. And every empire in the galaxy saw it. On the Vorton homeworld, thousands watched in silence as the symbol of the humans appeared above their skies for the first time in living memory. A mark once believed lost in history, now glowing brightly, like a warning. And in a forgotten archive chamber deep under Darathi High Command, a set of emergency protocols suddenly unlocked, ones no one knew existed, protocols written in an extinct language, human language. Back on Glirin 5, the ship's chamber doors remained open. The preserved human soldier inside did not move, but systems around him slowly activated. Lights blinked, tubes hissed. The cold began to lift from his armor. Whatever. He was whatever he had been. His return had begun. Yelly stood at the edge of the chamber, heart pounding. She knew this moment would change everything. It wasn't just about one ship anymore. It was about humanity's return. And the galaxy's reckoning. Drashel stared at the human body, still silent, How long has he been sleeping? The observer, metallic and tall, responded without turning. Time elapsed. 41,900 galactic cycles. Memory state protected. Vital signs. Stable. That's impossible, Drashel whispered. Not impossible, Yelly said. Planned. She pointed at the symbols on her datapad. This was never random. They left him here as a trigger, a message. When the galaxy crossed a certain line, he would wake, and we must have crossed it. Outside the trench, the ice continued to crack and fall away. But now, it wasn't the buried ship causing it. It was something deeper, something underground. The ground trembled. Machines hidden far below the surface were powering on. And as more ice melted, the true shape of the Terran warship became clear. It wasn't just a ship, it was part of a complex, a base, possibly even a small city, covered in layers of time and snow. One of the engineers at the base shouted from the communications tower, "Commander, you need to see this." They rushed inside. A large hologram filled the room. It showed a web of signals, originating from Glirin 5 and traveling through old human relay satellites, still hidden in space. The signals were bouncing, spreading, and targeting something massive. A black sphere appeared in the center of the map. Orbit unknown, coordinates lost, and then a name appeared beside it. Earth signal array, status active. Yelly's breath caught in her throat. They found Earth. The Council of Rethar called an emergency galaxy-wide broadcast. 100. Empires tuned in. Everyone wanted answers. Who were these humans really? Were they dead? Or were they coming back? Could they be reasoned with? But the broadcast didn't go as planned, because midway through the council meeting, every screen in every empire turned to static, then to black. Then a single line appeared, across billions of devices. You forgot who protected the stars. But we never forgot you. And after that, silence. No one could trace the signal. No one could hack it. The message had come from nowhere, and everywhere, panic spread. Some worlds declared a state of emergency. Others prepared for war, but no one really understood what they were preparing for. On Gliron 5, the preserved human soldier opened his eyes. They were not glowing. They were not cold. They were calm. He sat up slowly, looked around the chamber. The observer stepped back, bowing slightly. Yelly stepped forward, careful not to look threatening. "Can you understand me?" she asked. The man blinked. Then in perfect basic galactic he replied, "Yes, and I know what year it is." Drashel stepped in. "Who are you?" The man stood tall and strong, even after thousands of years. His armor shifted silently as he moved. "I am Commander Elias Corrin, Human Terran Defense, Protocol 7 Red." Yelly's hands shook. "What is Protocol 7 Red?" He looked at her. No anger in his face, just certainty. It means the galaxy failed. Outside, the ice cracked violently. More towers rose from the ground, hidden, hangars filled with weapons. Machines moved beneath the snow like awakened beasts. Giant turrets turned toward the sky. Corrin walked toward the ship's main deck. "I was sent to sleep, not to die," he said. "And I was told, if the stars forgot kindness, if the powerful turn to tyranny, then wake me, and remind them what humans do when pushed too far." Drashel stepped back. "This isn't necessary. We're not at war with humans." "You're not," Corrin replied. "But some are. And they just don't know it yet." Suddenly the warships, engines activated, the ground shook. It wasn't preparing for battle, it was preparing to leave. Yelly stared in awe. "Where are you going?" Corrin turned to her. "Home." And with a sound like thunder, the ancient Terran ship, after sleeping beneath ice for 40,000 years, rose into the sky. The stars above were watching. And soon, the galaxy would remember the one name it tried to erase: humanity. But this time, they wouldn't come with words, they would come with fire. The black sky above Gliron 5 still echoed with the sound of ancient engines. Commander Elias Corrin's ship had left the ice world hours ago, vanishing into space with a speed no known vessel could match. But its presence was still felt across the galaxy. Everywhere, old Terran signals continued waking up. On over 30 forgotten worlds, deep-buried war systems powered on. In orbit above Corvan, an empire known for crushing rebellions with no mercy, a hidden satellite activated. It scanned the surface for command structures, and then disappeared. Minutes later, the capital city of Corvan went dark. No power. No defense. In the silence that followed, only one message was transmitted. Judgment rendered, no retaliation advised. The Council of Rathar was falling apart. Their meetings turned from calm debates to shouting wars. Half wanted peace. The other half wanted to strike first. They still didn't understand. This wasn't a war they could start. It had already begun, and they were not in control. Meanwhile, Yeli and Drashel remained on Gliron 5, inside what was left of the base. The ice trench had collapsed after the warship left, but the control chamber was still accessible. Now, it was Yeli's obsession. She was searching through every human file, every signal, every line of code she could find. Something was bothering her. The warship left too early, she said, staring at the data. Its systems weren't fully recharged. It wasn't even at 50% power. Drashel frowned. So why leave? She looked up at him. Because it wasn't alone. Something called it. Something bigger. Suddenly, one of the ancient monitors lit up. A small red dot blinked in the corner. Incoming Terran vessel. Orbital veil entry. Code Titan. Drashel leaned over her shoulder. Another ship? No, Yeli said quietly. A flagship. The entire base began to shake. Outside, the sky changed again. Not red, this time. Blue. The clouds twisted and split as a shadow fell over Gliron 5. A massive object was descending from orbit, but not fast like a missile. Slow, silent, controlled. Yeli and Drashel ran to the surface just in time to see it. It wasn't like the first ship. It was at least 10 times larger. Covered in thick, layered armor. Weapons lined every side, some large enough to destroy a moon. Lights moved across its hull in strange patterns, like it was alive. But the most shocking thing? It wasn't made only of metal. The ship looked grown, fused with ancient stone, glass, and unknown materials. A living machine. Yeli stepped back in disbelief. This isn't a warship. It's a city. A voice echoed from above. Calm, commanding. Flagship Titan has landed, awaiting ground contact. Legacy interface authorized. Then a door opened near the ship's lower hull. A single ramp lowered. Steam hissed out. A walkway formed, and one figure walked down. It wasn't Commander Corrin. It was someone else. Human. Female. Wearing a dark blue suit that shimmered in the cold wind. Her eyes glowed faintly with embedded tech, and her steps were quiet but confident. She stopped just meters from Yeli. You opened the first door, she said. Yeli nodded slowly. We didn't mean to cause anything. You didn't, the woman said. But others will. Drashel stepped forward, trying to sound strong. Who are you? What is this ship? The woman looked at him. I am Saren Alaric, first speaker of the Second Dawn. This ship is Titan, one of 7. We are the last voice of old Earth. Yeli's heart skipped. You're not just soldiers, you're leaders. Saren nodded. We were never conquerors. We were protectors. But when we saw what the galaxy was becoming, what the empires were doing, we chose to disappear. Drashel asked the question they both feared. Are you here to destroy us? Saren didn't answer immediately. She looked at the sky instead, as if waiting for something, and then she said, Not yet. A loud tone echoed across the sky. The ground lit up with energy lines forming a pattern across Glirin 5's surface. Yelly gasped. "It's not a base, it's a beacon." The pattern pulsed once, then again. And across the stars, something answered. 7 lights appeared across the map Yelly held. 7 massive ships all waking up. Saren turned to them. "The beacons have been activated, we are gathering now, and the judgment will not be against one empire." She paused. "It will be against the idea that power means ownership, that might makes right, that the stars belong to those with the biggest fleets." She stepped forward. "Humanity remembers when the stars were shared, and now we return to balance the scale." Drashel's voice cracked. "You can't take the galaxy by force." Saren looked at him. "We don't need to. They'll destroy themselves trying to stop us." And with that, she turned and walked back up the ramp. The Titan rumbled, energy built around its engines, but it didn't lift off. Instead, it powered down and settled into the ground, waiting, preparing. Yelly whispered to herself, "The war hasn't started yet, but it's coming." And this time, the galaxy would be the battlefield, not just for survival, but for memory, for truth, for who really earned the stars. And behind it all, the long-forgotten humans were no longer sleeping. They were wide awake. The skies of over 100 worlds turned strange. Old satellites thought to be dead began to glow. Hidden beacons, long buried in deserts and oceans, started to hum. Across the stars, empires that once ruled without fear now stared at their sensors with dread. The Terran Titans had started to move. One by one, massive human warships began to rise from the forgotten edges of the galaxy. Some came from icy planets, others from asteroid belts, and a few, shockingly, had been hidden in plain sight, orbiting planets under false identities for centuries. The galaxy had called humans extinct. Now, humans were calling the galaxy to account. Inside the Titan resting on Glirin 5, Yelly watched in silence as its systems continued to wake. The walls pulsed with soft blue light. The machinery didn't creak or hiss. It breathed. She had never seen technology like this before. It felt alive. Drashel stepped beside her. "Another message is coming through," he said. Yelly turned to the screen. A new face appeared, human again, but older than the others. Stern eyes, white markings on his collar. A commander, maybe. He spoke calmly. "To all who can hear this, transmission. You have entered the age of reckoning. You were warned. We watched from the shadows. We hoped you would change. But now..." He paused, then added, "We no longer hope." The message cut out. A map filled the screen. 7 glowing points, each a Titan-class ship, began shifting across the stars. They were not gathering randomly. They were forming a pattern. A shape. Drashel leaned in. "They're surrounding something," Yelly whispered. "They're surrounding the Council." Back at the central hub of the Galactic Council on Rethar Prime, fear had become panic. For the first time in centuries, every guard was armed. Every ship was on high alert. Leaders from empires that once never agreed on anything now huddled together, trying to find a way out. "What do they want?" one shouted. "Why now?" another asked. Maybe they just want to scare us," one counselor suggested. But that hope died quickly, because at that moment, every screen on Rethar Prime turned black, and then a countdown appeared. 72 hours, no message, no explanation, only time. Drashel stared at the same timer from Glirin 5. "What happens when it ends?" Yelly turned to the Titan. "They give us time to choose." "Choose what?" Drashel asked. "Whether we remember who we were before power made us blind." Elsewhere, in the dark of space, a fleet from the Zorlath Empire made a fatal decision. They launched 12 dreadnoughts toward one of the Titans. They believed numbers would win, that the old Terran ships were only history. They were wrong. The Titan didn't fire a single shot. Instead, it released a pulse. One wave of silent energy, and every Zorlath dreadnought simply stopped. Their engines froze, their weapons locked, communications cut, not destroyed, but disabled, powerless, floating. The message was clear. This was not a war humans wanted, but if forced, they would end it before it started. Back on Glirin 5, Yeli and Drashel were granted access to Titan's inner chamber. Saren Alaric waited for them. Behind her, massive screens showed the countdown ticking, the ship positions updating, and a strange glowing cube floating in the air. "What is that?" Drashel asked. Saren turned to it. "The archive." "It holds your history," Yeli guessed. Saren nodded. "Our full history. The truth of every battle, every mistake, every peace we offered, every betrayal we endured." She looked at them. "And once the countdown ends, we will share it." "With who?" Drashel asked. "With everyone," Saren replied. "Even those who fear it. Especially those." Yeli took a breath. "You want the galaxy to remember, not fear." "Yes," Saren said quietly. "But if memory fails, fear will follow." Outside, Titan's hull opened slightly, revealing thousands of small drones rising into the sky. Each one carried pieces of the archive. They would scatter across the stars, hiding copies of the truth in every system, every forgotten moon, every place power tried to erase. Even if the Titans were destroyed, the story would survive. Yeli stepped back. "You planned everything, didn't you? Not just the war, the message, the memory, even the silence." Saren's eyes glowed. "We didn't plan it alone. Long ago, your ancestors stood with us. They believed in freedom too. We just kept the promise they were forced to break." Drashel frowned. "And if the council still refuses?" Saren said nothing. Instead, the countdown on the screen ticked lower, to 1844. Silence filled the chamber. Then Saren added softly, "Then we will do what must be done." Yeli turned away from the screen. Her hands trembled. The stars were changing. Not because of conquest. Not because of another empire rising, but because the ghosts of humanity were no longer ghosts. They were fire. They were light. They were memory. And in just over 60 hours, the galaxy would face the truth it buried long ago, whether it was ready or not. The countdown reached its final hour. On every screen, every system, every starship, from the peaceful merchant worlds to the brutal empire fleets, the same number blinked in red. Once gross. 1 hour. And still, the Galactic Council hadn't decided what to do. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried threats. They even tried to launch hidden attacks. Every move had failed. Every hidden weapon turned useless. Every fleet paralyzed. The Titans did not respond to fear. They responded to memory. In the council chamber, panic had become something worse. Silence. The kind of silence that comes when rulers finally understand they no longer rule. And then, the lights across the council hall turned blue. Soft. Calm. Familiar. Human. A final message appeared on the center screen. No voice. Just words. "This is your last moment to listen. Not to us, but to yourselves." On Glirin 5, inside the Titan, Yeli and Drashel stood with Saren Alaric. They weren't prisoners. They weren't hostages. They had been offered a choice: to witness, to remember, and now, to speak. Saren handed Yeli a small device. "Press this when the countdown ends. The archive will unlock for the entire galaxy. They will see who we were and what you let the stars become." Drashel stepped forward. "What happens after that?" Saren looked out the window where 6 other Titans now drifted in high orbit above different regions of space. "That depends on how they react," she said. Yeli glanced at the device. It was light, cold, but it held more power than any weapon. The truth. She looked at Saren. "You don't want war, do you?" "No," Saren said softly. But we won't run from it either. We ran once. That was enough. Outside the ship, energy surged across Titan's hull. The ship shifted. It wasn't preparing for battle. It was preparing for broadcast. The final countdown appeared on every screen across the galaxy. Grow. Saren stepped back. Now it's up to you. Yeli held the device tightly. All she had to do was press the center crystal. But her mind raced. What if the truth shattered everything? What if the empires tried to erase it again? What if fear won again? Drashel whispered, Yeli, this is what they feared. Not the weapons, not the ships, the truth. She closed her eyes and pressed it. The device lit up. Across the stars, every Titan began to pulse with light. Then, one by one, they opened. Not with missiles, not with lasers, but with memory. The archives activated. Every world, every device, every species, even the ones that had banned human data, received the same transmission: images, videos, logs, voices, proof of betrayals, of forgotten peace, of broken promises, of the moment when the empires chose power over unity, and how humanity disappeared to protect the galaxy from itself. The truth was no longer buried. It was everywhere, and it was too late to stop it. Rethar Prime, the council members stared in disbelief as the stories played. 1,000 years of secrets, unedited, unfiltered. They had built their rule on lies, and now those lies were crumbling. People across the stars began asking questions. Soldiers refused to fire. Civilizations paused. Some cried, some screamed, some finally understood. Back on Glirin 5, Saren watched quietly. No war begins today, she said. But a new future does. Yeli looked up at her. And what if they still try to destroy you? Saren smiled faintly. Then they'll see what we were really waiting for. The ground below the Titan began to shift. Not shake, shift. An entire city, ancient and hidden beneath the ice, started to rise. Towers formed. Docks opened. Energy lines lit across the glacier like veins of fire. It wasn't just a beacon anymore. It was a launch site, and hundreds of smaller ships were rising from it. Human, yes, but not for war. For peace. For rebuilding. For connection. We didn't hide to punish the galaxy, Saren said. We hid to protect what was left of its soul. Now we return, not to rule, but to remind. Drashel watched the ships rise in silence. Will they ever forgive what we became? Saren looked at him. That's not our goal. Forgiveness is theirs to choose. Truth was ours to give. The Titans slowly began to move, leaving orbit, not to attack, but to travel, to speak, to share, to awaken. Yeli stood at the window and whispered. They were already waiting, even before the empires rose. They just waited for the right moment. And now, across the stars, the moment had arrived. The age of silence was over. The age of truth had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again.